What's up guys, welcome back to a new video, and in this session we will be focusing on how to solve quadratic equations. As always, in these videos I will be focusing on the exercise part of things. I will be solving exercises step by step and explaining everything I do along the way, so that it minimizes any confusion that you might have on this topic. In this video we will be focusing on the algebraic approach of solving quadratic equations. And in this sense, it is very similar to a previous video that I made where I solved exercises on solving linear equations. So basically it is find x. And in that video, which was more basic, we looked at equations of the form a times x plus b is equal to 0. And then what the algebraic approach means is that we have to find an x, so a and b are just fixed numbers, and we have to find an x such that this statement holds. Now, in this video, we'll be focusing on quadratic equations, which are a bit more complex. Here, we were looking at equations of the general form of a times x squared plus b times x plus c is equal to 0. In these equations, a, b, and c are just fixed. For a specific exercise, a, b, and c will be just numbers. And our goal then is to find a certain x, so we have to find a number for x such that this equation holds. Fortunately, there is a general solution for these types of equations, and it's the one that I've written here, and it will always be correct given that you didn't make any calculation mistakes. You have here x plus minus, because in this case there are always two solutions, so two numbers for x such that this equation, which is written above here, is correct. Now, why this is, I will leave to a theory video, which I might be making in the future. But for now, it's just sufficient to know that there will always be two solutions. And if there is only one solution, as we will see in an exercise that we will do, well, then it can still be written as two solutions. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's first look at this general form. So basically, you only need the parameters a, b, and c of the equation, and then you will always get the right solution. With that introduction out of the way, let's just dive into a first exercise to make this all clear of how it goes. The first exercise is a very simple one. It's x squared minus 4 is equal to 0. And in this first exercise, I want to show that there is an intuitive way of solving things, but this one does not translate to more difficult problems. So intuitively here, we can see that if we fill in x is equal to 2, well, what do we get then? Then we get 2 squared minus 4, which is equal to 4 minus 4, which is equal to 0. So x is equal to 2 is a solution to this problem. However, like I said, there will always be two solutions. And it's often forgotten that in this case, x is equal to minus 2 is also a solution, because squaring a negative number also becomes a positive number. So if minus 2 squared minus 4 is 4 minus 4, which is also equal to 0. So x is minus 2 is also a solution to this problem. However, more often than not, you will not be able to make this intuitive answer. So what we then do is just use this general form as a solution and just fill in the numbers. Let me just reiterate the general form, which is ax squared plus b times x plus c is equal to 0. In our case here, with the x squared minus 4, we see that this a is just 1. So a is equal to 1. B is absent here. There is no term in this equation that has an x, so b is equal to 0. And then c, we see that it's a constant, so it's a term that does not include x, is minus 4. So c is equal to minus 4. So if we then use the general form that our two solutions is equal to minus b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, divided by 2a, Well, we can just fill this in, right? Because we know a, b, and c. So in this case, it becomes minus 0, because b is 0, plus minus the square root of 0 squared, which is 0, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is minus 4. And we divide this by 2 times a, which is 2 times 1, which is 2. Now, making the calculation, we get 0, which vanishes. So plus minus the square root of 0, which is 0, minus 4 times 1 times minus 4, divided by 2, which is plus minus square root of 16 divided by 2, which is of course plus minus 4 divided by 2 is plus minus 2. And we have our answer. Now, we got this answer already before here by just looking at the equation and figuring it out on our own. However, this is a more general approach and it will always work. And to give you an example of an exercise where you cannot intuitively solve it, but you can solve it with this general approach, we'll see this in the next exercise. The next exercise is x squared plus 2 times x minus 3 is equal to 0. And to not lose track of what we're doing here, let me just remind us that what we're trying to do in these exercises is to find the x such that this equality sign is correct. So we have to find x, as in we have to find a number, such that if we fill it in here and here, that we indeed get 0. Let's just look at this equation and first determine a, b, and c. We see that a is equal to 1 here, which is basically here in front of this x squared. B is the number in front of x, which we see here is 2. So b is 2. And then c will be the number where there is no x. In this case, it is minus 3. So c is equal to minus 3. Again, we can fill in our general form. X is minus b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2a. And this, unfortunately, is indeed a formula that you have to learn by heart. So we can now just fill these in. So minus b is minus 2 plus minus square root of minus 2 squared, which will be 4, minus 4 times a is equal to 1 times c is equal to minus 3, divided by 2 times a, and 2 times a is 2 times 1 is equal to 2. So let's write this out. It's minus 2 plus minus the square root of 4, because minus 2 squared is 4, minus 12, because 4 times 1 times minus 3 is 4 times minus 3 is minus 12. And this minus sign here just stays in front of it. And then we divide these by 2. So what do we get? We get minus 2 plus minus the square root of 4 plus 12. And 4 plus 12 is 16. So square root of 16 divided by 2, which is equal to minus 2 plus minus 4 divided by 2. So we get two answers. So x plus, when we take here the plus, will be minus 2 plus 4 divided by 2, which is equal to 2 divided by 2 is equal to 1. In the second solution, if we take here the minus sign, we get minus 2 minus 4 divided by 2 is equal to minus 6 divided by 2 is equal to minus 3. So these are our two answers for x, that if we fill it in our original equation here, that we get indeed 0. And a good way to check this, to see whether we didn't make any mistakes, is to just fill in these solutions that we found and see if it is exactly the case. Let's do this. X is equal to 1. So let's do a check. So the first one, x is equal to 1. So let's fill this in. We've got x squared, which is 1 squared, plus 2 times x. So plus 2 times x, and x is 1, minus 3. And is this indeed equal to 0? So let's see. So we get 1 plus 2 minus 3, which is equal to 3 minus 3 is equal to 0. So this solution is correct. We didn't make any mistakes. So let's now look to the second solution, which was x is equal to minus 3. So that would be minus 3 squared, because x is minus 3, plus 2 times minus 3, because x is minus 3, minus 3. Is this equal to 0? Well, let's see. Minus 3 squared is 9, plus, well, or should I say minus, because 2 times minus 3 is minus 6. Minus 3, is this equal to 0? Well, yes, of course it is, because we get just 9 minus 6 minus 3, which is equal to 0, so we didn't make any mistakes. So our solution here of x being either 1 or minus 3 is the solution for our exercise, and we got it in a completely general way. Let's go to the next exercise, which is minus 2x squared plus 3x minus 1 is equal to 0. And again, the exercise here is to find an x, a number that when we fill it in our equation, that we get indeed 0. And again, we can just start by identifying our a, b, and c. So a is a number in front of the x squared. And here we have to be careful because it's minus 2 in this case. So a is minus 2. B is the number in front of the x, which is plus 3 in this case. And c is just the number without any x, which is minus 1. And again, when we have these numbers, we can fill in our general solution, which is again minus b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, divided by 2 times a. And we can just fill this in. So in our case now, x plus minus is equal to minus b, which is minus 3, plus minus the square root of 3 squared minus 4 times minus 1, because a is minus 1, times minus 1. And we divide this by 2 times a times minus 2. So here we have to keep the minuses in mind. So we have to really focus and so that we don't make any mistakes on the minuses. Let's see what this gives us. Minus 3 plus minus the square root of 9, because 3 squared is 9, minus 4 times, and I will multiply this minus 2 times minus 1 first, so which will be 2, because minus 2 times minus 1 is just 2, divided by 2 times minus 2, which is minus 4. This is equal to minus 3 plus minus the square root of 9 minus 8 divided by minus 4, which is minus 3 plus minus square root of 1 divided by minus 4, which is equal to minus 3 plus minus 1 divided by minus 4. So now we can get our two results. So if we take the plus here, we have our x plus, which will be equal to minus 3 plus 1 divided by minus 4, which is minus 2 divided by minus 4 is equal to 1/2. So that's our first solution. Now, if we take the minus sign here, then we get our second solution, which is -3 minus 1 divided by -4, which is -4 divided by -4, which is equal to 1. And we have our two solutions here. And again, let's check if we didn't make any mistakes by filling our solutions in our original equation here. So what if we fill this in now? So we got -2 times x squared. So that's -2 times, and x in this case is 1/2. So 1/2 squared. The next term was plus 3x, which becomes plus 3 times 1/2. And then our constant term was simply -1 minus 1. So is this equal to 0? Well, let's do the calculation real quick. -2 times 1/4, because 1/2 squared is 1/4, plus 3/2 minus 1, is this equal to 0? So this at this point is not immediately clear. So this 2 and this 4 cancels, and this 4 becomes a 2. So we get -1/2 plus 3/2 minus 1. Is this equal to 0? Well, let's see. So these two have an equal denominator, so they're both divided by 2. So we can just write it like this. -1, is this equal to 0? Well, let's see. So we have -1 plus 3, which is just 2 divided by 2 minus 1, and this is indeed equal to 0. So this first solution was indeed correct. So let's now look at this second solution and see whether that indeed gives us the correct result. So it's that when x is equal to 1. So again, we have -2 times and then x squared, which in this case is 1 squared, because we have x is equal to 1 in this case. Well, and in this case we had x is equal to 1/2. These are just these solutions here. What did we add then? So plus 3 times x, but x is just 1. And then our constant term was -1. And is this equal to 0? And this will be going much faster, because 1 squared is just 1. So we get -2. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 3 minus 1, and this is indeed equal to 0. So both of our solutions are correct. We didn't make any mistakes. Let's go to the next exercise, which is 3x squared minus 2 times x minus 5 is equal to 0. Again, we need to find an x such that this equation is correct. All right, let's identify our a, b, and c. A is a number in front of x squared, which is 3 in this case. A is 3. B is a number in front of x, which is -2 in this case. And c is a number without an x, which is -5. So again, we can have x plus minus is our general formula, which we've written so many times now that we are starting to memorize it. And we can just fill in our a, b, and c. So in our case, we get -b, so it's -2, watch out for the minus sign, plus minus b squared, it's -2 squared, minus 4 times a is 3, and c is -5, divided by 2 times a is 2 times 3. This is equal to 2, because it's minus and minus becomes a plus minus the square root of -2 squared is 4. Then this 3 times minus 5 is minus 15. So we get minus 4 times minus 15 divided by 6. This is equal to 2 plus minus square root of 4 minus, and 4 times minus 15 is 60, it's minus 60. So minus 60 divided by 6, which is equal to 2 plus minus square root of 4 minus, or plus, because this minus and minus becomes a plus 60 divided by 6, which is equal to 2 plus minus square root of 64 divided by 6, which is simply 2 plus minus 8 divided by 6. So now we can get our two solutions. So if we take the plus solution, then we get the following. 2 plus 8 divided by 6 is equal to 10 divided by 6, which can be, well, simplified to 5 divided by 3. And this is our first solution. Then x minus, if we take the minus sign here, then we get 2 minus 8 divided by 6 is minus 6 divided by 6, which is minus 1. And so now we start to see the strength of this general solution, because, for example, x is equal to 5 over 3. Well, it's very difficult to see that this is a solution of this initial equation. And, well, to see whether it is exactly the solution to this equation, or that we didn't make any mistakes, let's again perform our check. So we get 3 times x squared. And for this first check, we take that x is 5 divided by 3. So we get 3 times x squared, and x is 5 divided by 3. What was the term with the x? It's minus 2x, minus 2 times x, and x is just 5 divided by 3. Minus 5 should be equal, if we didn't make any mistakes, to 0. So let's see. 3 times, and 5 over 3 squared is just 5 squared divided by 3 squared. So it's 25 divided by 9. Minus 2 times 5 over 3 is 10 over 3. Minus 5 should be equal to 0. So let's see whether this is the case. This 3 cancels this 9, and this 9 becomes a 3, because 3 divided by 9 is 1/3. So we get 25 divided by 3 minus 10 divided by 3. Minus 5 should be equal to 0, and this is starting to look quite good, because we have 25 minus 10 divided by 3, minus 5 should be 0, and of course we see that we get 15 divided by 3 minus 5, which is indeed equal to 0. So our solution here is exact correct. We can now also check the second solution, which is this one, x is equal to minus 1, by doing exactly the same. So x is equal to minus 1. Let's see if we didn't make any mistakes here. The problem was that 3 times x squared, and x squared is now just minus 1 squared, minus 2 times x, and x is minus 1, minus 5 is equal to 0. Well, it should be if we didn't make any mistakes. Minus 1 squared is just 1. So we get 3 times 1, which is 3. Minus 2 times minus 1 is plus 2. So we get plus 2 minus 5, which is indeed equal to 0. And here we didn't make any mistakes as well. So these are our two solutions, and we checked that they were correct for this initial problem, which, well, wasn't at all trivial to see whether it was a solution. Let's go to the next exercise. which will be a little bit more involved. So we get x plus 2 times x is equal to 0. This equation, as you will often find in the wild, is not in the form of a times x squared plus b times x plus c. So this is not in this form. So what do we do then? Well, we can first write out this equation to get it into this form, because this equation is just this equation in disguise. So let's look what we can do. So we first multiply these two. So this will be x squared. And then we multiply these two, which becomes 2x, which is equal to 0. And now we do have exactly this form of equation. Now with a is equal to 1, because we have nothing in front of this x squared, and b is equal to 2, because this 2 is in front of this x. And now c is equal to 0, because we don't have any term without an x. All of our terms, x squared and 2 times x, have an x, so c is equal to 2. And this will simplify our solution by a lot. Because let's look again at this general form, which we are now all starting to memorize. Divide by 2a. So what does this become now in our case? So b is 2, so we get minus 2 plus minus square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 0 divided by 2 times a is 2 times 1 is 2. And we see now that in this term we have times 0 here because c is 0. So what does this now become? Minus 2 plus minus square root of 4 divided by 2, because this second term just drops out, which is equal to minus 2 plus minus 2 divided by 2. And we get our two solutions. So x plus, if we take the plus sign here, is simply equal to minus 2 plus 2 divided by 2 is 0 divided by 2, which is basically 0. And the negative side of things, when we take the minus sign here, it just becomes minus 2 divided by 2 is minus 4 divided by 2 is minus 2. So these are our two solutions. And now I want to point out something quite interesting and something that might have saved you this entire calculation by rewriting the original problem again. So the original problem was x times x plus 2 is equal to 0. Now this exercise you could also have solved intuitively. If we again think about the meaning of these problems, it basically says find an x such that this equality sign is true. So if I would ask you that and you didn't know the general form or how to solve such equations, well, you would immediately see that, well, what happens if I fill in x is 0? Well, then you get 0 times 0 plus 2. Well, and this is just 0 because you multiply this entire thing by 0. So x is 0 would be a solution that you would immediately see. And then because you know that quadratic equations always have two solutions, you would also see that this thing can also be 0 quite easily if x is minus 2, because you again then get, if x is minus 2, because then you get minus 2 times minus 2 plus 2, and this thing just becomes 0. So the entire thing is 0. So these two solutions that we got through the general way here, we could have seen from the start already, but just to show you that this general approach with this general solution will always give you the right answer if you calculate correctly. Let's look at the following exercise, which is the second to last one. 5x minus 2 squared is equal to 2. So here we again do not have this form of a times x squared plus b times x plus c is equal to 0. However, we know that we can rewrite it in this form. Let's rewrite this. This becomes 5x minus 2 times 5x minus 2 should be equal to 0. Let's do this very slowly. So first we multiply this 5x times 5x. This becomes 25x squared. Then we multiply this 5x by this minus 2, which becomes minus 10 times x. Then we multiply this minus 2 with this minus 5, which becomes minus 10x. And finally, we multiply this minus 2 with this minus 2, which becomes plus 4. And this should be equal to 0. So now one more step to get it into the familiar form. So we get 25x squared minus 20x plus 4 is equal to 0. And this is exactly our familiar form. So we can now go ahead and identify our a, b, and c. A is 25, the thing in front of the x squared. B is minus 20, the thing in front of the x. And c is 4, which has no x at all. So we can solve our equation by filling in the general form of the equation, which we all know very well by now. So let's fill this in. This becomes minus b, so it's minus 20. Beware of the minus sign. Plus minus the square root of minus 20 minus 4 times 25 times 4 divided by 2 times 25. These become very big numbers, but bear with me because the solution will be quite simplified. Minus 20, well, the minus 20 becomes 20. Plus minus the square root of minus 20 squared, which is 400, minus 4 times 25 is 100, times 4 will be 400. So we get 400 minus 400 divided by 50. So now we see that the square root here, we had these quite large numbers here, just drops out because it becomes 0. So we get 20 plus minus 0 divided by 50, which is just 2 divided by 5. And we see that we only get one solution here because we have this plus minus 0. So we only get one solution. However, this solution is kind of a double solution, because if we write our original equation, so let's look at this. 5x minus 2 squared should be equal to 0. So it is indeed clear that we didn't make any mistakes, because if we fill it in, we get 5 times, and x was this 2 over 5, minus 2 squared is equal to 0. And this is indeed equal to 0 because this drops out and we get 2 minus 2 squared, which is equal to 0. And we're happy with this. However, why is there only one solution and we expected 2 solutions? This square here needs to be taken into account, because what actually is here is 5x minus 2 times 5x minus 2 is 0. So one solution comes from this one and one solution comes from this one. However, because they are the same, this solution will also be the same. So x plus is equal to x minus is equal to our solution. Let's go to another exercise, which you will find a lot, and it will be the last exercise, but it will show that you really know how to solve these problems. It's x times x minus 1 minus 10 is equal to x plus 5. And this is as hard as it gets. So if you can solve this equation and you didn't make any mistakes, or you understand how this equation is solved, then you will be able to solve quadratic equations. Then you'll be able to tackle any one that you get across. So let's rewrite this in the form that we know and the form which allows us to solve these equations in this form. All right, let's just tackle this one. So first we do this x times that x. So we get x squared. Then we multiply this x times this minus 1, which is minus x. This minus 10 stays here, and we get x plus 5. Rewrite this by getting these terms to the other side of the equality sign. Because here we have a 0 on the right-hand side of the equality sign, and we also want to have 0 here. So what we want to do is get these two terms to the other side of the equality sign. And we can do that by first subtracting 5 from both sides of the equation. So we get x squared minus x minus 10. I just rewrite them. Minus 5. Oh, well, to make it more clear, I can write it in the same color. Is equal to x plus 5 minus 5. And this now gets 0. In the next step, we subtract x from both sides of the equation, because even though this term has vanished, this x is still here, and we want to also get it to that side of the equality sign. So we subtract x from both sides of the equation. So we get x squared minus x minus 10 minus 5 minus x is equal to x minus x, and this just becomes 0. So to recap this, we have x squared minus x minus 10 minus 5 minus x is equal to 0. So this is more starting to look like this equation. So what we do then is get these terms together. So we have x squared, we leave as this, minus 2x, because minus x is minus 2x. And then we just get these two terms together, which is minus 10 minus 5 is minus 15. And there we have it. We have an equation in the form that we can very easily solve by using the general solve equation. So we got from this equation, which didn't look a lot like this one, we got to this one. And now I'm sure you already know how to solve these equations. So we identify A, B, and C. A is 1 in this case, because there's nothing in front of the x squared. B is minus 2. And C is minus 15. So this we can use in our general formula. For one last time, I will write it down to avoid any confusion. And now we can just plug our A, B, and C in this equation, and we basically just solve it. So minus B is minus minus 2, beware of the minus sign, plus minus minus 2 squared, minus 4 times A, which is equal to 1, times C, which is equal to minus 15, divided by 2 times 1, because A is equal to 1. Minus minus 2 is just 2, plus minus, minus 2 squared is 4, minus 4 times 1 is 4, times minus 15 is 4 times minus 15 is minus 60, divided by 2. And again, we get 2 plus minus 4 plus 60 divided by 2 is equal to 2 plus minus square root of 64 divided by 2 is 2 plus minus 8 divided by 2. And we have our results here. So x plus, if we use this plus sign here, is just equal to 2 plus 8 divided by 2, which is 10 divided by 2, which is just equal to 5. X minus, if we use the minus sign here, we get 2 minus 8 divided by 2 is minus 6 divided by 2 is minus 3. And we have our final results of this session. And of course, which I leave to an exercise, is that you can now check whether you didn't make any mistakes. And in particular, you want to check these answers with this original equation here. So let's just copy this one. Copy and paste it over here. And then we can just fill these in. Well, you can do this by just filling in for one thing, we can fill in x is equal to 5. And we can fill in x minus is equal to minus 3. And then you will see that this equality sign indeed is true. So that was it for the exercises on how to solve quadratic equations. And as always, if something was not clear or you're confused about anything, you can just leave a comment in the comment section below. At this point, I can still, read all of the comments, and I'm very glad to help you by answering them. Again, if you really learned something, I would appreciate it if you gave this video a like, because in this way, other people that also struggle with these issues will be more likely to find these videos. And I will be uploading around 2 to 3 videos on such topics each week, really focusing on the exercise part to give you some practice examples. So if you want to see these videos and want to get notified, you can just always subscribe to the channel, which would mean a lot to me. Well, that was it. I hope you learned something and have a nice day. Bye.